From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Coming up on AgDay, a new way of teaching the Pledge of Allegiance to kids, and it has them putting their hands in motion.
We'll sign the agreement in the beginning of January.
New details as the U.S. and China move closer to signing that Phase 1 trade agreement. Reaction comes quick after the EPA releases its final rule on the controversial Renewable Fuels Standard, as USMCA finally moves toward that stamp of approval.
What it also does, Madam Speaker, is it sends a message to the rest of the world that we can work with our friends to get better trade deals.
AgDay, presented by the Chevy Silverado and the all-new Silverado HD, the strongest, most advanced family of Silverados ever.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. We have several stories we're following this morning. New details on the Phase 1 trade deal with China, the EPA releasing its rule and the Renewable Fuels Standard, and this nearly 400 days after the new U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement was signed. It is passed in the U.S. House.
On this vote, the yeas are 385 and the nays are 41. The bill is passed.
For producers, America's dairy farmers will have expanded market opportunities in Canada, with Canada agreeing to eliminate its Class 6 and 7 milk pricing. Canada agrees to terminate its wheat grading system, and U.S. poultry producers will have expanded access to Canada for chicken, turkey, and eggs. Now, the updated trade agreement included last-minute provisions to labor.
For farmers in my district, this means more dairy, more poultry, and more eggs are heading to Canada.
Now our dairy farmers will have greater market access to Canada, and our wineries will have an easier time selling their wine in British Columbia.
After approval in the House, the agreement goes to the Senate, which isn't expected to take up the issue until next year. The biofuels industry had been waiting to hear what the EPA would decide regarding the Renewable Fuels Standard, but it announced it's only making minor tweaks. As we've reported, controversy has surrounded those small refinery exemptions that allow some refiners to bypass requirements to blend ethanol and other biofuels. Now, an agreement was reached in September that Republican Senator Chuck Grassley says would have reallocated those lost gallons on a 3-year rolling average. Instead, the EPA is adjusting for exempted gallons based on Department of Energy estimates of needed waivers. The ethanol industry says the problem with following DOE estimates is that EPA has generally chosen to ignore those recommendations, and instead the amount of waived biofuel gallons was almost double the DOE suggested amounts. Now, EPA says that rule is designed to maintain a net floor of 15 billion gallons of ethanol used under the RFS. The EPA now setting the 2020 target volume for corn ethanol at 15.8 billion gallons, with an expectation that after the small refinery waivers, the total blended ethanol volume will be 15 billion gallons. Grassley not pleased with the announcement, releasing a statement saying, quote, "Once again, EPA is playing games and not helping President Trump with farmers." An agreement was reached on September 12th in an Oval Office meeting between several Midwest leaders, President Trump and other members of his administration. Now, this does not reflect what we agreed to in that meeting, end quote.
Obviously a disappointment, and that's been, a sticking point on the all the Corn Growing Association, membership for quite some time. And it looks like we're not going to get much in the way of favorable news there. So, again, I don't know that it's a major market mover. I think that, some disappointment on the demand side was already built into prices where we're at on corn. But it's certainly not a good development.
The biofuel target released by EPA Thursday hold biodiesel volumes at 2.43 billion gallons through 2021. U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin's confirming Phase 1 of the U.S.-China trade deal will be signed in early January. Speaking to reporters outside of the White House, Mnuchin saying the agreement has been translated. He doesn't expect any changes.
Our focus on the moment is implementing Phase 1, which again, I just want to emphasize, the first time we've ever had any agreement like this, an enforceable agreement. These are things that people have been working on for 20 years. Protection for intellectual property, protection for technology, structural agricultural changes, currencies, financial services. This is going to be a tremendous opportunity for U.S. workers and for U.S. companies.
China is signaling details of the agreement will not be made public until the deal is signed. Now, that's according to a Ministry of Commerce spokesman. Industry sources say China will become a $2 billion market for U.S. poultry after that agreement is signed. It's predicted the country will run low in reserves due to the outbreak of African swine fever that cut 50% of its hog population. Now, this graphic from North Carolina State gives you an idea of what China imports right now. An economist from North Carolina State explains why that could soon change.
We've also seen China had banned U.S. poultry imports and were because of avian influenza, and they were, I think in 2018, 82% of China's imports of poultry came from Brazil. Brazil is always our big competitor on everything. And so with that ban being gone, then I think China will import a lot of U.S. poultry because Chinese consumers are going to become poultry eaters now rather than just pork. Poultry production can be ramped up much quicker. So they'll ramp it up in China. They'll buy a lot from Brazil and the U.S. because it'll take a long time for their swine industry to recover.
Both USMCA and the trade war with China continuing to be a factor for farm finances. The December Rural Main Street Index climbing above growth neutral for the 10th time in the past year. The index now standing at 50.2. The monthly survey of bank CEOs showed the trade war and the lack of passage of USMCA continuing to dampen the economic outlook in that 10-state region. Now, for the first time since November of 2013, farmland prices advanced above growth neutral. Also, 1 in 9 of the bankers said they expect 2020 farm loan defaults to expand by 10 to 20%. Almost 2/3 of bankers reported their banks had to increase loan collateral requirements. Now, there are some big weather changes on the way for many parts of the country. Meteorologist Mike Hoffman has the latest.
Yeah, the biggest change is going to be the Pacific air flooding the whole lower 48. There is still some Arctic air in the northeast from that last shot that came into the northeastern part of the country. But you can see on the jet stream, that Arctic air is going to be shut off as we head into this weekend. While many farmers may have harvested their corn, thank goodness, there's still a lot of work to do out there. Lance of southwestern Minnesota sharing this video of what he's been doing on his farm lately. He says he's been busy coring his last bin to make sure his corn keeps. An important step many producers are taking to keep their corn dry and cool. A big issue with many producers forced to pick wet corn this year. I'll have more in your forecast coming up in a little while.
Weekly export sales numbers turn heads on Thursday. We'll have those numbers coming up next, and later teaching a fresh perspective on the Pledge of Allegiance. We're off to North Dakota ahead of winter break. Today in the country.
Ag Day, brought to you by Precision Planting, provider of practical and effective precision ag technologies to help make farmers smarter every season. Learn more at precisionplanting.com.
Some good news in the USDA weekly export sales report. Some commodities hitting a marketing year high. USDA reporting sales of wheat were up 73% and up 95% from the prior 4-week average. Increases were reported for the Philippines and Mexico. Corn also hitting a high for the year with over 1 million metric tons of corn being sold, up 96% from the previous week. The top buyers were Mexico and Japan. Soybean sales were also over 1 million metric tons, up 36% from the previous week, with increases for China and unknown destinations. USDA also announcing a flash sale of 126,000 metric tons to China on Thursday. Joining us in studio today, we have Ted Seifert, Zaner Ag Hedge. Ted, let's talk about the soybean complex and not just soybeans themselves, right, because given all the news around trade, that's caught a lot of attention. Yeah. But there are other components that are helping support these prices.
Yes. Let's talk about oil share to start off with.
Okay.
We just had an OPA crush report, and while the crush number came in well below expectations, so did oil stocks. And oil stocks are really relatively low. So soybean oil is, I think, the bigger value product in the soybean complex. And part of that's because soybean meal's been under a bit of pressure. While soybeans have broken out of their downtrend, soybean meal is still tussling with that idea. I think it will do it ultimately. But when you look down at Argentina in particular and the big export tariffs that are getting put in place and looking to continue to increase, they'll vote on that again by the end of the month, their soybean meal is going to be a lot easier for them to export. So we're going to have a lot of competition down there. And the soybean meal market doesn't love that. Now, we know we have good feed demand here in the United States, so hopefully that will offset. And if China starts buying a lot of our soybeans, then there could be some scarcity of meal. So I do think meal has upside potential, but at the moment it's the soybean oil that's the strongest, and the idea that we're going to sell soybeans to China, that's what's leading the complex higher.
It seems like in the last couple of weeks, and we're talking Argentina, we're talking a possible trade deal with China. It seems like we've started to shift some of the conversations around soybeans and the outlook going into 2020.
Yeah, right. I mean, the soybean outlook for 2020 is much different than when we were standing here this time last year. I mean, this time last year we were looking at no end in sight to the trade deal. We were talking about 1 billion plus bushel carryover in soybeans and growing. And so between the weather events that we had this year and now the idea of a trade deal being in place, and China had been buying pretty aggressively in front of that trade deal, we have our ending stocks down below 500 million bushel. The potential for that is to drop down below 200 million bushel, even maybe below pipeline. It's a completely different story. So it's going to be very interesting to see how acreage shakes out and how that shapes the acreage conversation here in the next couple of months too.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, Ted. Thanks for the insights. We'll be back with more Ag Day coming up in just a minute.
For professional marketing advice specifically tailored to your needs, call Zaner Ag Hedge at 312-277-0113. Join Andrew McRae for Farming the Countryside, a farmer-focused podcast that is all about production agriculture. Farming the Countryside is available wherever you listen to your favorite podcast and is brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions, the world's largest provider of crop inputs and services.
Meteorologist Mike Hoffman here, taking a look at our drought monitor this week. And Mike, it has improved, and we expect more improvement here.
Yeah, especially in the Northwest, where it's been getting dry, but the long-term drought really hasn't shown up too much yet. You're going to get a lot of moisture coming up this week. Or at least the rest of this week into the weekend, they're going to see a lot of moisture. Now, we continue to see the severe and extreme drought conditions for corner region. That has shrunk slightly. We've seen this area over the past couple of months shrink over South Texas and central Texas as well, and the southeast. All of those areas have slowly improved, but we haven't seen a dramatic improvement in the last 4 weeks. You can see what it looked like 4 weeks ago. You add in the next 4 weeks, and you can see how things have been shrinking, especially in the southeast, little bit there in Texas, and we have added to the drought situation in the Pacific Northwest. But like I said, there's a lot of moisture coming your way over the next few days. All right, and there it is. When you look at the national map, that's the main feature on the map right now. 2 storm systems, one over southwestern Canada, other out over the Pacific, all coming slowly northeastward. We also have a storm system, kind of an unusual place there, over northeastern Mexico. That's going to move into South Texas and then into the Gulf and eventually Florida. This is a very cold Arctic air to the other side of this front. This front's going to drop a little farther south, but basically it turns around and heads back northward as a warm front, flooding the lower 48 as we head through this weekend with much milder air. You can see this storm system already heading back out over the Gulf of Mexico by tomorrow morning. The next storm system still just northwest of Seattle at that point with the trailing cold front, and this moisture plume will just continue to come your way as we head through this coming weekend. And again, that storm system is heading toward Florida for Saturday night and Sunday. All right, checking out precipitation estimate past 24 hours. Not a lot, mainly northwest. Next 36, mainly northwest, although we are going to see a little bit there in Texas as well, especially southern Texas. Snowfall, same idea. Most of it's going to be the higher elevations of the northern Rockies and the far northwestern portions of the country. Temperatures, we're going to be on the cool side across the northern tier of states, mild in the south. And you can see while it is very cold in the northeast, that's about the only spot, and we will begin to warm up even there as we head through this coming weekend. There's tomorrow afternoon. So there's the jet stream. Again, the Arctic air leaves in the northeast. We have that storm system moving through the Gulf Coast region. That moves away. And then we start to still see the active weather out west as we head right through next week, and it becomes warmer farther east. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. Heading to Miles City, Montana, mild, some sunshine, high temperature of 46. Taking a look at Shreveport, Louisiana, mostly cloudy and cool with a high of 54. And Portland, Maine, lots of sunshine today, but on the cold side, high of 28.
Could rewiring bacteria help keep the planet carbon neutral? We'll tell you about some new research that's showing promise. And later, giving the words "One Nation under God Indivisible" a fresh perspective for these North Dakota fifth graders. It's a hands-on assignment today in the country. Scientists around the world are working on this problem: produce what we need without increasing greenhouse gases. Well, some scientists have now come up with a way to rewire one bacteria. The scientists from the Weizmann Institute of Science in Israel believe they may be at the earliest stages of being able to make E. coli carbon neutral. Now, normally E. coli feeds on sugar and emits CO2 gas, but the researchers have engineered the bacteria to use CO2 as their feedstock instead of sugars. To get E. coli to swap its preferred sugar diets for the gas, scientists took a genetically modified strain of E. coli and fed successive generations of it big concentrations of CO2 and just small amounts of sugar. The idea of this was that the bacteria starved of sugar would evolve and adapt to its new carbon dioxide diet. Now, the E. coli that were able to evolve were the most successful.
This could be progressed even more into actual solutions that will be used both in the industry but also in the agriculture to create more food and also try to tackle greenhouse gas emissions.
But scientists have more work to do. While the E. coli does consume CO2, researchers say overall it still produces more carbon dioxide than it consumes, so it's not yet carbon neutral. A strange but apparently true story involving USDA in the Marvel superhero movie Black Panther. Now, NBC News reporting the fictional country of Wakanda from the movie was listed as a free trade agreement partner on USDA's agricultural tariff tracker. Now, the site is maintained by the USDA's Foreign Ag Service. A spokesman telling NBC News it used the fictional country as a way to test the system, and someone just forgot to remove it. It has since been removed, but USDA having a little fun with it all, posting this on its Twitter page on Thursday, quote, "While we remove the Kingdom of Wakanda from our list of U.S. free trade partners, our relationship will always be strong. Hashtag Wakanda forever." Now, some people commenting, wondering if we were trading the fictional metal vibranium from Wakanda used to make Captain America's shield. From a fictional country to celebrating our own. Up next, we'll meet a group of patriotic fifth graders learning new appreciation for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Closed captioning is brought to you by BASF. Grow smart with BASF. We create chemistry.
One way to show our patriotism for America is putting our hands over our hearts to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. And as Cliff Naylor reports, that custom goes hand in hand with a new tradition students are practicing at a school in Medina, North Dakota.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
Jessica Schleck's fifth grade students are some of the most patriotic children in America.
With liberty and justice for all.
Every morning, the 13 kids in her class put their hands in motion and pay homage to their country.
It's new and it's different to them, and so they were like, wow, we get to do this, that is so cool.
It took 2 weeks before Lucas Lytle had the new routine in hand.
Once you get the hang of it, it's not that hard.
Mrs. Schleck says signing the Pledge of Allegiance helps teach students the true meaning of the words in the oath.
One nation, under God, indivisible, so we're all together. This is a chain, and we're all stuck together, so it can't break apart.
Madeline Schleck learned to sign the pledge in a couple of weeks, and then went on to earn the Great American Award.
77 years ago, our fathers brought forth.
To receive the designation, petite patriots are required to recite the Gettysburg Address, name the 45 presidents, identify all 50 states and capitals, sing the Star-Spangled Banner, and recite the preamble to the Constitution.
It's difficult.
Destiny Opp hopes to become the 10th student who has successfully completed the program. Then she too will be proudly pictured on the wall behind the teacher's desk.
Nice job, nice job.
Destiny has made 3 attempts to earn the honor and pledges not to quit until she completes the curriculum.
I forgot that one right there.
In the meantime, these sons and daughters of liberty will continue to enhance their understanding of what it means to be an American by signing the Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning of every school day. I'm Cliff Naylor, reporting for AgDay.
That's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. Spend part of your day with us. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.